So, Congressman Paul, where do you come down on this?
One thing I might say that we have made some inroads on the Federal Reserve. We passed a bill last year. We got a partial, audit of the Fed, and we've learned a whole lot. They were dealing in $15 trillion. $5 trillion went overseas to bail out foreign banks. But you know what? Congress did a lot. I've worked on it for a good many years. But Bloomberg helped and Fox helped. They had court cases, Freedom of Information Act. And there are some even at this table who didn't think auditing the Fed was such a good idea, that we could call up the Fed and ask them, and they would tell us what they're doing. I've been calling them up for 30 years, and they never tell me. But we're getting to the bottom of it. But if you want to understand why we have a problem, you have to understand the Fed. Because the cause comes from the business cycle. We shouldn't be asking what to do exactly with the recession. Obviously, we have to deal with that. But you can't you can't cure the disease if you don't know the cause of it. And the cause is the booms. When there are booms, and they're artificial, whether it's the CRA or whether it's the Fed easy credit, when you have bubbles, whether it's the NASDAQ or whether it's the housing bubbles, they burst. And when they do, you have to have corrections, and that's what we're dealing with. And we can do this by building coalitions and not sacrificing any principles.
Juliana? Let me go to housing. What would you do? Would you get the federal government out of housing? Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no need to. Look at
no Freddie Mac, no Fannie Mae, nothing.
That's where the distortions come. That's where the moral hazard comes from. That's where the malinvestment, overbuild. It was predictable. You talked about what economists we should look to, and unfortunately, we've been living with Keynesian economics for many, many decades. And everybody who was right about predicting the bubbles were Austrian economists. They said they were coming. And yet they're also saying, and I agree with them, that everything that we're doing right now is wrong. So what we did with the housing bubble, yes, we had too many houses. It was glaring in our face. The bubble was doomed to burst, and it came because of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, easy credit, and also Community Reinvestment Act. So who got into trouble? The people who did the speculating, the Wall Street, the derivatives market. They got the bailout. They got privileges. So what happened to the middle class? They lost their jobs. They lost their houses. This whole system is all messed up. And what I hear here is just tinkering with the current system and not looking at something new and different. And it's a free market economy without a Federal Reserve system, with sound money. If you don't have that, you're going to continue with the bubble. And this propping up this debt and keeping the correction. You need the correction. You need to get rid of the malinvestment and the debt. The debt is the burden on the economy.
All right, we'll be back. All right, Congressman Paul.
Since the Federal Reserve is the engine of inflation, creates the business cycle, produces our recessions and our depressions, the Federal Reserve obviously is a very important issue. And fortunately tonight we have a former director of the Federal Reserve at Kansas City. So I have a question for Mr. Kaine. Mr. Kaine, in the past you've been rather critical of any of us who would want to audit the Fed. You said you've used pretty strong terms that we were ignorant and that we didn't know what we were doing, and therefore there was no need for a Fed audit anyway, because if you had one you're not going to find out everything, because everybody knows everything about the Fed. But now that we have found and we've gotten an audit, we have found out an awful lot on how special businesses get, bailed out. Wall Street, the banks, and special companies, foreign governments. And you said that you advised those of us who are concerned, and you belittled. You say, call up the Federal Reserve and just ask them to get the PR person. So do you still stick by this, that this is frivolous, or do you think it's very important? 64% of the American people want a full audit of the Fed on a regular basis.
Mr. Kaine.
First of all, you have misquoted me. I did not call you or any of your people ignorant. I don't know where that came from.
I'll get it for you.
All right? Now, so you got to be careful of the stuff that you get off the internet, because that's just not something that I have said. Secondly, when I served on the board of the Federal Reserve in the 1990s, we didn't do any of the things that this Federal Reserve is doing. I don't agree with the actions of this Federal Reserve. I don't agree with the actions that have been undertaken by Ben Bernanke. We didn't have a $14 trillion national debt to prop up with some of the actions that they're taking. And I have also said, to be precise, I do not object to the Federal Reserve being audited. I simply said, if someone wants to initiate that action, go right ahead. It doesn't bother me. So I've been misrepresented in that regard.
But people who say, well, we ought to audit the Federal Reserve because we don't know enough about it. Well, here's the advice I've given to people who are worried about an audit of the Federal Reserve. Call them up and ask them if you can stop by and have one of their PR people or one of their public relations people explain to you how the Federal Reserve operates. I think a lot of people are calling for this audit of the Federal Reserve because they don't know enough about it. There's no hidden secrets going on in the Federal Reserve to my knowledge.
How about a hint?
To take that job. I got to keep them confidential.
Okay, Congressman Paul.
Spoken like a true insider. No, Alan Greenspan was a disaster. Everybody in Washington, liberals and conservatives, said he kept interest rates too low, too long. Of course, the solution was lower them even more, and they think that's going to solve our problem. But if I had to name one person that did a little bit of good, that was Paul Volcker. He at least knew how to end or help, end the inflation. But of course, with my position that I don't think highly of the Federal Reserve, and I think we should have sound money, and we shouldn't have somebody deciding what the interest rate should be and how much money supply we should have. I mean, nobody satisfies me. But certainly Alan Greenspan has ushered in the biggest bubble. And what did we do? We've continued the same thing, doing the same thing. We think the inflation under Alan Greenspan was bad, so we're trying to solve the problem by inflating even further. So Bernanke compounds the problem. He's inflating twice as fast as Greenspan was. But Greenspan caused so much trouble, and he used to believe in the gold standard. I think he's coming around to that, and before he retires, he'll write his biography and explain why he's coming back to the gold standard.
I want to go from the gold standard to a... No.
I just want to add one quick thing. Dodd-Frank obviously is a disaster. It's estimated it's going to cost $1 trillion. I think one of the reasons we're not getting anywhere, and we're not getting anywhere in Washington, it's a partisan fight. It's a fight over power, because Sarbanes-Oxley, which was done by the Republicans, it cost $1 trillion too. It's repealed that too. I mean, if you look at what we've done as Republicans, we have caused a lot of problems. To say it's all in these past 2 years, I mean, I think that is so misleading. That's why the American people are sick and tired of listening to the politicians.
All right, I want to bring my colleagues in.
Right.
Karen.
Governor.
Congressman Paul.
My motivation, my goals has always been to promote liberty, believing that's what made America great. If we want prosperity, if we want peace, we understand what the cause of liberty is all about. And we have to understand that a free market system and sound money gives us the prosperity. And it also is the humanitarian program, because once you get into the welfare state and the socialist state, it all backfires. So if you care about people, you believe in liberty, that's what made America great, that's what I want to restore.